Good evening. Tonight I would like to discuss polarity in Wicca. Polarity exists in all life in a variety of forms. Religions, as a reflection of life, aspect polarity, but they do so in varying ways. Many Eastern cultures have the yin and the yang. The Jewish people place polarity upon the tree of life. Catholics personify polarity as God and the devil. In Wicca, the polarities are typically expressed as the goddess and the god. Unfortunately, in today's society, the polarity of ancient times has been perverted. Where male and female polarities were once complementary and overlapping each other, we now have sexual stereotypes that separate the male from the female and serve no one. Boys wear blue, girls wear pink. Um, Gods are harsh and warlike, goddesses are willowy and loving. Boys like trucks, girls like cars. These kind of things are actually detrimental to the idea of polarity in Wicca. We tend to carry these stereotypes into our theology, and we let society dictate how we view our own religious icons or our own religion itself. Luckily, if you dig into Wicca or indeed many pagan religions and the various gods that are worshipped by pagans around the world, you will find gods and goddesses who break these conventional stereotypes. You might see warrior goddesses such as Maka. You might see sun goddesses such as Grania. Perhaps there are moon gods. There are, especially in Egyptian mythology. And you have love gods. We indeed do have love gods in various different mythologies. There are love goddesses as well in some mythologies, but being able to have gods and goddesses of the same type, so love gods and love goddesses, warrior gods and warrior goddesses, really helps reinforce that gender stereotypes have no place in Wicca, especially modern Wicca. So, polarities in religion can still exist without the taint of stereotypes as long as we're willing to embrace that idea. But it can be difficult and might require you to truly think and meditate and explore your own gender biases because, let's face it, we likely have them. Most of us do have some kind of gender bias. And in today's world, we are supposed to be fighting against those gender biases, embracing a more complete view of polarity and gender. So, male and female polarity is not the only polarity present in religions. Um, a lot of religions divide things based on good and evil. Now, that division is ancient as well. So, whether you're dividing things based on good and evil or the male and the female, both ideas are fairly ancient. Wicca, however, doesn't really embrace the good and evil polarity. It tends to instead embrace the idea that good and evil exist within all of us. They're not separate. And it's just a different way of looking at the world. It doesn't mean that a religion that embraces the good evil polarity instead of the masculine feminine polarity is wrong. It's just a different way of viewing the world. So, dividing the good from the evil, especially in the cases of the gods, does make the world a little more of a battleground where the good god is battling the evil god, or a god and the devil thing. That doesn't make it wrong, it just makes it not Wicca. In Wicca, the world is not seen as a battleground, it is instead seen as a playing field where we are all working together, is generally the way Wicca views that. So that's one of the reasons why Wicca doesn't embrace the good evil dichotomy, because that does turn the world into a battlefield. Instead of saying, look, we all have good and evil within us, we're all trying to do the best we can, and so let's all work together to try to do the best we can. That tends to be more of the Wiccan perspective. It doesn't make the other perspectives wrong, right? Religion is neither right nor wrong. So it's simply what works best for you. So just because your friend embraces a religion that has a masculine feminine polarity and you don't, or vice versa, you embrace the masculine and feminine and they embrace a different type of polarity, it doesn't make either one of you right or wrong. It's just something you can discuss. It's something else you can talk about. So that's not to say, though, that evil doesn't exist. Sometimes when I say we don't do the good evil thing in Wicca, someone will say, well, how can you deny that evil exists? Of course evil exists. There are terrible people out there. There are terrible things that happen. But in the Wiccan faith, evil is just seen as a part of everything else. It's seen as a choice. Generally in Wicca, it's the gods and the goddesses are good and evil, so themselves. So being a warrior can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing, depending on how you decide to express that aspect of yourself. Being in love can be a good thing, but being obsessed is a bad thing. So two sides of the same coin kind of thing. So there's good and evil in everything. And that's why Wicca tends to embrace the masculine-feminine polarities, even though the masculine exists within the feminine and the feminine exists within the masculine. Because good and evil is a different concept entirely, and good and evil tends to be a choice, whereas masculine versus feminine isn't necessarily a choice at all. So because good and evil is a choice, that's not a type of polarity that Wicca itself embraces. There's not a bad god and a good god. There are simply gods and goddesses, and they have their place in the world, and they have their place in our worship and in our religion, but they don't necessarily break down into good and evil. You can't take one god and classify him as a good guy and the other one and classify him as a bad guy. That's just not the way it works. Just like people, some choose to cultivate the dark side of their nature while others nurture the light. Both exist naturally. So Wicca does tend to embrace a more masculine-feminine polarity and tends to disagree with a good and evil polarity. But your religion or your friend's religion or your parents' religion might be different than yours, and that's all right. It's okay to embrace different types of polarity depending on your worldview, which is what religion really is. It's just different worldviews. And looking at the length of the video, we're about to hit 8 minutes. And because we're about to hit 8 minutes, I am going to stop here and next week come back and talk about the goddess in Wicca. And if we're lucky, I'll also cover the god. Something tells me I won't. Something tells me I will only talk about the goddess. And then the following week, I'll have to talk about the god, because I am trying to make these videos not super long, and we're over 8 minutes. So until next week, blessed be.